guys, welcome back to Urban Rhino Tutorials. Today I want to talk to you about Aperture. So Aperture is the third and final setting of the exposure triangle that we've been talking about in the last two episodes. Make sure you check those out if you haven't already. So the other ones we talked about were ISO and shutter speed. So the aperture is essentially your depth of field, how in focus your photo is, and what part of your photo is in focus. So some of the terms that we're going to talk about throughout this tutorial are depth of field, bokeh, you'll hear me refer to the background blur, your f-stop. Those are all things that have to do with aperture. So you may have noticed in some pictures, especially a single subject, the background is really, really blurry, or you know, the Christmas lights behind someone, how they turn into like a glowing ball. That is all due to the camera's aperture setting. So throughout this tutorial, I'm going to show you some examples of what happens if you have a wider aperture setting versus a more closed aperture, and how that affects the lighting, what's in focus, and just the overall quality of the picture. So let's get into this. Hi guys, welcome back. So today I want to cover aperture with you, which is one of the three components of the exposure triangle and one of the most important elements in learning how to take a good photo. So my beautiful assistant slash model Vivian, say hi. Hi. So I'm gonna cover depth of field, what bokeh means, and how to get that beautiful blur behind your subject. So when you are taking a picture of a single subject, your aperture, which is how much of your photo is in focus, is essentially what aperture is, that needs to be set lower. So for instance, if I'm taking a picture of Vivian, I'm gonna set that as low as I can go. With this lens, I can set it at an f2. So I'm gonna take a picture of her at f2. I have my shutter speed at 500 and the ISO is set at 400.
Mommy, can you do a video?
Yeah. So I'll include the link to those videos as well in the exposure triangle. I'll include a link to the ISO and shutter speed videos as well as the exposure triangle if you haven't learned about those already, because that's equally as important. So if I take a picture of her with these settings, like I said, 500 for the shutter speed, 400 for the ISO, and I have it at f2. Viv, can you look at Mama? So you can see how blurry that background is. You can't tell that there are houses behind it. All it is just a blur. Now, if I were to change my aperture and go up, that is going to start opening, sorry, it's going to close the lens, but it's going to allow less light in, so the picture is going to start to get darker. It's also going to make more of the picture in focus. So this is what you would do as you start to have two people in a photo. If you're doing a big group shot, you want that number to go higher and higher. So by me going to, let's change this. Okay, so I'm going to bump this aperture to, let's do 5.6.
Mommy, 1 minute.
Okay, to 5.6. You know, a 3-year-old model, they don't always stand still and they like to talk to mommy, so that's okay. Now you're gonna see what's gonna happen. So you can see, like I said, how much darker and how much more in focus the background is starting to get. Now let me go one step further, and if I raise the aperture to a 10, I'm keeping the ISO the same and the shutter speed the same. You're gonna see how dark it is, as well as the background starting to come into focus. Vivian, look here, baby.
Now
So almost completely dark. You could probably salvage it in camera raw, but would not be my suggestion. So the important thing to think about with Aperture is that as you lower the number, more light is going to come in, as well as the subject is going to become in focus and the background is going to blur. So the last thing that I want to cover is depth of field. So if your subject, hey Viv, can you come here? Hi. Pick anywhere you want to stand. Perfect. So if I took a picture of her as is, she is going to be in focus, the background blurry. However, if I were to scoot her really close to the trees, that actually reduces that depth of field and the trees are going to start to become more in focus. So it's important to remember that creating distance between your background and your subject is going to help give you more of that bokeh, which is that blur that you're looking for. So it's important to remember that when taking pictures. If you're trying to take pictures, you can't figure out, you know, I have a pretty low aperture. The lens is wide open.
Hey, Mommy, would I pick a different spot?
Okay. The lens is wide open and you still can't get that blur. That's usually why, is because the subject is too close to the background. Okay guys, that pretty much does it for Aperture. Make sure you tune in to the ISO, shutter speed, and exposure triangle videos as well to get the full rundown of how all of those essential settings work. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure you stay connected with Urban Rhino on social media. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, comment below, and of course, subscribe to our channel.